Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. We find ourselves now just a few days before Ash Wednesday and the beginning of Lent. If you're anything like me, you may just be beginning to think seriously about whether you are going to give something up or take something up this year. Or perhaps you feel a little like I do, that so much has been taken from us in the last year, that this Lent it will be enough to simply just get through. As we approach this period of preparation, at a time when it feels like our world has been in an extended Lent of fasting and waiting, our gospel reading shows us how the story ends. It is a taster, a glimpse into the future, a future of hope. But we can't get to the hope at the end of the story without making the journey. We can't get to the hope at the end of the story without making the journey. Here is our reading from Mark chapter 9, verses 2 to 9. 6 days later, Jesus took with him Peter and James and John, and led them up a high mountain apart by themselves. And he was transfigured before them, and his clothes became dazzling white, such as no one on earth could bleach them. And there appeared to them Elijah with Moses, who were talking with Jesus. Then Peter said to Jesus, "Rabbi, it is good for us to be here. Let us make 3 dwellings, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." He did not know what to say, for they were terrified. Then a cloud overshadowed them, and from the cloud there came a voice. "This is my Son, the Beloved. Listen to him." Suddenly, when they looked around, they saw no one with them anymore, but only Jesus. As they were coming down the mountain, he ordered them to tell no one about what they had seen until after the Son of Man had risen from the dead. So let's try and get inside the story we've just heard. As Mark begins, things seem fairly ordinary. Jesus and 3 friends, Peter, James and John, walk up a mountain. As friends, they would have walked together often. All very ordinary. But no sooner do they arrive than Jesus is suddenly transfigured before them, and his clothes became dazzling white. Weird. Let's state that right at the beginning. It's a bit weird. It's not only out of the ordinary, but out of this world, which of course is precisely what the story wants to communicate. And if that is not extraordinary enough, Moses, the great lawgiver, and Elijah, the ultimate prophet, the law and the prophets appear alongside Jesus. Jesus who brings both the law and the prophets together. Jesus says he came to fulfill the law and the prophets. And here on the mountain we have a picture of what this looks like. This is both literally and figuratively a mountaintop experience. No wonder Peter, James and John are terrified. Of course, A little terror never silences Peter, who says, "It is good for us to be here." When we are in a special place, experiencing a powerful moment, we don't want that time to end. We want to cling to it, to make it permanent. Now, as if things weren't already extraordinary enough, a bright cloud then appears, overshadowing the mountain, and the voice of God echoes around them, saying, "This is my Son, the beloved. With him I am well pleased. Listen to him." Now, we have previously heard the voice of God in Mark's Gospel. It comes in the opening chapter at Jesus' baptism. But on this occasion, God has particular instructions for Peter, for James, and for John. He tells them to listen to Jesus. Why would he need to say this? Well, if we go back to chapter 8, the chapter before in Mark's Gospel, we can see that Peter has recognized Jesus as the Messiah. But then he quickly refuses to acknowledge and accept Jesus' message about his death and resurrection. Peter and the disciples needed to be reminded to listen to Jesus. I imagine that the voice of God coming from a cloud would be enough to make most of us listen fairly carefully. Glowing clothes, visits from significant figures of the past, hovering clouds and heavenly voices. Wow! It was so extraordinary that when they all come down the mountain, Jesus tells them to tell no one about what they had seen. That moment on the mountain would forever mark the lives of Peter, James, and John, and change the way they look at everything. Certain wow moments have a way of doing that. We all have wow moments. Maybe you can bring one to mind today. For me, 2 of those wow moments were the days our children were born. As I held each of them for the first time, I can remember both moments clearly in my mind now. It was like somehow a little bit of me that I didn't know existed was brought alive. And I knew in that very moment that life was never going to be the same again. Life hasn't been the same. We can no longer just get up and go out whenever we want to. Lie-ins are certainly a thing of the past. The girls together are a whirlwind, causing havoc, but bringing joy and fun wherever they go. But more significant perhaps than the practical changes they have brought with them, at that wow moment, I knew I was never going to see the world in the same way again. I watch the news now and hope that the girls might grow up in a world where they are safe. I wonder what I can do now to make sure that they have a world worth living in. I drive differently. I speak differently. I dream differently. Everything has changed. On that mountain, Peter, James, and John were given a glimpse into the future. They saw past their doubts, past their fears, past all worldly cares and worries. For one brief shining moment, God had opened the door to the end of time, and they could see hope. They could see how history would be worked out. Things could and would never be the same again. The presence of the glory of God among humans results in a transformation. But what does this transformation mean for us today? Well, here are 3 simple things that we can do. Number 1, make ourselves available. Peter, James and John were invited on the walk because they were already with Jesus. Perhaps this Lent, we need to make ourselves available to Jesus once again. Remembering we can't get to the hope at the end of the story without making the journey. Number 2, learn all you can about the Christian faith and its tradition. It is important. Read the Bible. Make the most of opportunities to study other books. And talk about them with others. Exactly how Peter, James and John recognized Moses and Elijah is unclear, but they did, and they knew how incredibly important they were. Had they never heard of them, the moment on the mountain would not have been nearly as powerful. And number 3, listen to Jesus. Only twice in the Gospels does the voice of God speak. Once at Jesus' baptism and again here. God is clear. This is my Son, the beloved. Listen to him. Listen to him. We can hear him when we worship. Listen to him. We can hear him as we study the Bible. Listen to him. We can hear him in the voice of others. Listen to him. We can hear him in our community and in the wider world. Listen to him. It is so easy to listen to other voices, but we drown out the voice of Jesus. This Lent, let's strive to be people who listen to Jesus. Amen.